I thought Howard and I were coming up together, so I'm going to head over there right now. Although I did want to say one thing. Who was here last year? Okay, probably 3/4. Is it 80 degrees warmer today? Do you remember coming here last year? It was like 40 below, so I'm heading over with Howard. Are we on?
We're good.
We're good. Howard, good morning. Are we going to start with the video?
I think so.
I'd love to introduce a video that Howard put together about leadership.
Every business starts with a dream, but if the dream is about making money, you're not going anywhere. If it's about making a difference, then the sky's the limit. I've been in the film business for years, I've been in the music business for years. It's easy to tell what sucks in those businesses, but it's really hard to say what's going to be great. So you can't control the success, you can't control the box office, but every day you can control how well you did and how much you put yourself into it.
Many people around the country know Howard Tullman, not because he's been on the cover of magazines, but because he's worked hard to develop those relationships and to be a good friend and a good advisor to the people that he knows.
Every single day we want to be doing the best we can, and there's no finish line. I don't think you can phone this stuff in. You really have to make a commitment to doing it right.
I've known Howard for at least 15 years, and I remember we talked about the violently executed plan today is better than a perfectly executed plan next month. He's about getting things done, executing with a vengeance, but I think that's part of being creative.
Most of the job growth in this country for the last 10 years has come not from small businesses, but from new businesses. Right now here we have about 250 different startups. Try to surround the people here with an environment that says, we don't settle, we think you can be excellent, we don't believe in shortcuts.
I don't think Howard sleeps. You can get an email from Howard at 1 in the morning, you can get an email from Howard at 5 in the morning on the same morning.
You want to be a moving target. You want to constantly be doing new things. And so when we started Tribeca, or when we've been working with the companies at 1871, we're always saying that somebody is running right behind you. This is a world of fast followers, and you have to keep getting better. Because ultimately, the expectations of customers are progressive. And what was yesterday's miracle is tomorrow's so what?
He's bringing in the arts, knowledge of society, combining all of these to give a unique insight that I think help make businesses successful and help make businesses excellent.
And you know, there's a consistency in great works of art. There's a consistency in anything you do that says basically there's a right way to do it. And mostly the right way to do it is to do it until your face falls off. When it really comes down to it is that because we believe in craft, because we believe in effort, because we believe in preparation and perseverance and perspiration, there's no substitute. There's no other way to do this. You're either going to be excellent or you're going to be an also-ran. We don't think we can necessarily outsmart everybody, but we know we can outwork everybody.
Howard, that's a very inspiring video.
Thanks.
For the room people, we have 900 people here in commercial real estate this morning. I think many of them know about 1871 and your role there, but before we go to 1871, could you talk about your perspective on leadership in, especially when it comes to startups? What's informed those positions, a little bit about your background and what you've done to get to where you're at in your career today?
Sure. First of all, the frightening thing about media is the minute you make it, it's out of date. So we have actually 325 companies now. At 1871, we have about 1,200 people a day who come through there, 9 universities, incubators, accelerators. We have Elm Spring, which is a real estate incubator. We're working closely with DTZ to sponsor a lot of the initiatives in technology and real estate, JLL, CBRE, college, you name it, suddenly. And, you know, the largest single thing that I would say about the entire situation of leadership is that people need role models, and so we live it every day. I mean, you know, we figure that if they're watching us and seeing how we are executing what our responsibilities are, that's the best way that we can model the behavior that we expect from them.
And your career before you joined 1871, what was your background that led you to this?
You know, we really don't, you know, have enough time to, I mean, I can tell you by decades. So for 10 years I was a lawyer. For 10 years I did large-scale data and information businesses. For 10 years I did movies, media, computer game development. For 10 years I did venture capital turnarounds. And the last 10 years before 1871 we did schools. So I moved Kendall College from Evanston down to Goose Island. We built, as you saw, Tribeca Flashpoint. We built, you know, another, well, the Mart at 1871 is now going to be about 100,000 square feet and still growing. So I think we've done maybe 200,000 or 300,000 square feet of construction just in the last decade. And so I've been involved in 20 or 30 different businesses and across a very broad spectrum. But the most interesting thing has been to watch technology accelerate through these businesses and really change every business. And when 1871 started, it was interesting. We were sort of snobby about, well, it better be a super techie mobile application thing. And we don't want no food guys and, you know, real estate and medicine, what's that, you know. And in the basically 3 years, technology has caught up and changed every one of those industries. And so there are no limits now on the kinds of companies we're working with. And in fact, we've added vertical incubators in real estate and food and financial technology and education. And we have a program for veterans. We have a program for female entrepreneurs. We're doing a lot with the Urban League and other groups around diversity. So it's exciting, and, you know, and Chicago is a great place to be doing it.
Yeah, and could you speak a little bit about Chicago's role in the technology world? So we see all these industries are growing. At one level we're partnering with, I suppose at another level maybe we're competing with the San Franciscos and the Bostons. You know, collaboration, competition. Where's Chicago?
You know, we don't think we're competing because our vision is really different. You know, Chicago, I don't think we aspire to be Silicon Valley for a couple of reasons. First of all, the three gating factors in this business of new businesses are capital. You can get that anywhere now. And in fact, Chicago has had about $6 billion worth of exits just in the last 18 months. So plenty of cash, plenty of serial entrepreneurs, angel investors, all kinds of folks to provide resources to companies. So that's number one. Cash is not an issue. Number two, talent. So having a cluster of universities that's really second to none. There are no other parts of the country that have 8 or 9 active universities engaged in innovation and entrepreneurship and education as well. So we think that the talent pool is growing and that we really can be a startup city for the center of the country. But the biggest thing is customers. You know, when you fly into the Valley or you fly into New York and you say you have an office in New York and you're in some shitty walk-up in Williamsburg, you know, or you're in South San Francisco and it's $8 million for some rat trap. You know, Chicago has sort of a different quality of life. Plus, we think that we're in a B2B world, and that's what we focus in on. We're not dealing with moonshots. We're not interested in the next dating site that also delivers gourmet donuts or something. You know, we're like, how do I incrementally improve business processes? And when you have an economy like Chicago, where no single component is more than like 13%, you have opportunities for major engagements with major customers across 6 or 7 different, substantial playing fields. So we're excited. We think Chicago is great. That's all part of that. And then when people come into 1871, as you saw somewhat in the video, we say, look, if you're interested in making money, you're in the wrong place. If you're interested in making a difference, that's what we're trying to do. But even more than that, it's not just about building or making a business, it's about making a life. And that's where we really win, because this is a great, great place to start your business, but also start your family, your life. It's a very workable, manageable city, and it's getting better all the time.
So let's talk about 1871. 1871's a place.
Yeah.
It's a
It's the year,
culture.
it's the year of the Chicago Fire.
It's the year of the Chicago Fire. Could you just talk a little bit about
Well,
this?
so that was a sort of a peculiar choice, but it really is about what happened after the Chicago Fire, which is that there was a period of enormous renaissance and rebuilding about half the city or more. And so it's that analogy that's very important. The name represents sort of what we think that technology is now doing. It's enabling another explosion and growth of everything that's going on in the city.
And what resources are available to why do startups choose to join and be part of 1871?
You know, I think that when it started, it was just intended to be, can we bring all the diverse elements of the community together? Can we bring the VCs? Can we bring the universities who don't like to play nicely with each other? Can we bring all the companies and the technologists and everything that you need to do one of these things right? That was the first goal, I think. And it was quite successful, sort of somewhere between the JCC for, techies and, Tech Treehouse or something like that. But after the point, it gets to be not about how much you raise, but about how much you build, and about real results and real jobs. And 1871 has generated about $40 million worth of fundraising, about 1,400 jobs. We've spun out about 75 companies now. So now it's a factory. Now it's actually about building businesses, and it's all about real results and concrete metrics and things like that. So that's been a change in the last, let's say, year, where we focus much more on how are you doing, are you progressing? We've got all these resources there, we've got all these tools available, but you have to come in and make it happen. And if you don't, we actually do tell people that their babies are ugly. That's not an easy conversation. But the good news, this is what's so exciting, the good news is that it's like the Hotel California, you can check in, but you can never leave. So they don't leave. What they do is they look around and they say, all right, my idea sucks, but I want to do this for my life. I'm excited about building things. And so they attach themselves to a better idea or to another company. And it's that organic growth that's really interesting. And so we have our own recruiter, in the last 45 days, she's hired like 22 people just for the companies within 1871. But understand that the Mart is also being re-envisioned. You've got 700,000 square feet of Lenovo space, formerly Motorola, formerly Google, whatever, okay? You've got Braintree, you've got companies like Yelp moving in, McDonald's moved next door, but they're hoping to expand their digital division pretty substantially.
I was going to ask you about the Mart. I'd say for many of us in the business 5-10 years ago, I think there was a lot of concern about the Mart. Now, it's one of the great turnaround stories in the...
Well, and I think the Vornado guys have a vision, and it's the first and second floor is going to be all redone. That's about a $20-30 million retrofit. I think where we're headed really are a new kind of community, and this does bear on real estate. I call them wells. You're going to work someplace, you're going to exercise, you're going to live there, you're going to learn. So all of those components, when we talk to our workforce, and they're not all 20 years old, but they're all between, let's say, 25 and 55, this idea of proximity is really significant. They want to be, they don't want to own a car. I gave that very popular talk at the car show recently. But it's true. It's true. When you think about the economy and the ecology and the environment, and we don't know what we would do if we opened the hood of a car other than void the warranty, and the neighborhood garage can't fix anything because you don't have a $200,000 diagnostic thing. And so, and it's not macho anymore, notwithstanding the car ads, and notwithstanding Porsche, my sponsor, but the idea is that they want to be in these communities, and so they want to be close to where they work, but they also want to have all the other aspects. So the sharing economy and what's so great about a lot of the things the mayor is doing are exciting as well. And I think, you're going to discover that they don't want to own things, period. We're seeing these new micro living facilities where 300-400 square feet is the size of a unit, because all the common areas have been pushed out. And then, and to show you the impact sort of technology, we're seeing in New York, the new buildings that are being built are enhancing two areas, which are sort of peculiar. One, the mailrooms are about 5 times bigger because of e-commerce. And two, they're bringing back meeting rooms, which sort of went away. And the reason is that people actually know who are in their buildings now, okay? And it turns out, this is a great stat, it turns out that the ROI on Wi-Fi for a building is off the charts, because the more connected the people are in your building, the more likely they are to stay and to renew their leases.
So we had, in preparation of this when we were discussing, we had a very interesting perspective on the built environment. So you walk into 1871 today, and it's an amazing feeling, actually.
Yeah.
There's tons of activity. It's all wide open, at least in the old,
Right.
the legacy space. But maybe that's not the right answer for everybody.
Well, I think the civilians think that buzz is amazing, and that's that's very true. I think if we did, and we've done some of this with Steelcase and some of our other partners, if you do time lapse, what you discover is over time in these open areas that when anybody actually wants to get anything done, they pick themselves up and they go hide somewhere, right? Whether it's a private call, whether it's concentrating, whether it's a smaller meeting. So we think proximity is important for a lot of reasons that have to do with how much they learn from each other and how much they borrow technologies from industry to industry. But openness, I think you're going to see in the next few years, is going to go away. And in part it's because of a fiction that apparently you have until you're about 30, which is that these kids think they can multitask. And multitask means you're just doing a lot of things poorly, right? So the idea of focus is what we're discovering is that's why they go away. They go away so they can focus and actually get something done. But this idea of being in an open area with constant disruption and everything else is going to change. And it's going to change pretty soon. And you'll see us coming backward through 1871 1.0 and changing that as we did in the 2.0 section. And then the last thing that's just immediately observable is the thought that open areas construct more communication opportunities is also sort of nuts, because everyone is plugged in with earbuds and they don't hear anything. They don't even hear you when you want to talk to them. So it's like, hey, so we have little, sort of rods that are built into their seats now that sort of summon them. But other than that, it's tough. It's really tough.
I think that's a big change from what everybody would assume would be your position on that.
Well, I also think we have customers who come in and they have a new set of concerns, which I don't think even anybody thought about 2 years ago. These are large companies. We want our startups to work with them. It's not easy to work with them, but that's the future. These companies come in and they ask two interesting questions that you wouldn't expect, and this is something that all the commercial environments are going to have to deal with. They want to know about the security of networks, and they want to know about all of the sort of concerns around connectivity, but now it's not connectivity. They get that everyone is connected. They want to know how protected their proprietary information might be if they start to share information with our companies. We've had a couple of them come in and say they don't even like these open plans where the ceiling is not secure, where you're not in a real box. So to the extent that people are using demountable wall systems to provide flexibility, that's great, but that doesn't provide a secure environment.
In 1871, is that the way you're leaning now? Not back to maybe permanent walls, but more
flexible walls, and the ability for companies to grow and scale in place for a lot of reasons. Also, I think you're going to see that, and this is what's going on with us, companies start in shared space, then they move to reserve space, then they get a little bigger and they want a dedicated space. And then identity is coming back. I think there's more interest in having an identity when you get to a certain point. One of the things, and this is very interesting, and it bears again on all the folks in the audience, we would like them to stay longer in 1871 than they probably would be inclined to do, and not be sort of seduced by these remnant space opportunities within corporate environments. And the reason is they don't get until they leave that they're disconnecting from the community, that they're not able to access all the other resources and everything else. So they go for what seems like short money, like, gee, you're only going to pay taxes and utilities for the first 2 years. They lose a lot of things. They lose the connection to resources, to the educational programs, to the events, to the people there. We lose them as role models and prospective employers and everything else. And the other thing that they discover, and this they come back and say to a person, is that they roll into these beautiful corporate towers, and the security guards, either think they're a messenger or that they're a criminal. I've never had more guys come back and say, the guard gives me the stink eye every single day. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe let's learn who you are pretty soon. So.
You have companies rolled out of 1871 into the MART?
They've rolled out into the MART, and they've rolled out and come back.
And come back.
Yeah.
And your initial space in 1.0 was?
1.0 was 50. We've added 25. We're adding another 25 that'll open in February, and we'll add probably another 50 in June.
So technology, ever-changing, change is accelerating?
Yeah, change is absolutely
How do
accelerating.
you stay up on it all? I mean, how does a person...
Not sleeping.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's so much change. Are you just...
Well, here's
to fiddle around with a lot?
Yeah.
Stay up on?
Yeah, I do. I mean, this is one of our latest and most exciting things. So this is a little device, and what it does is all day long when you walk, it's building a charge so that at the end of the day, you have 2 more hours of battery life for your phone. So all of you who have that anxiety related to that, it's called an ampy, and literally just the motion of walking or riding a bike or whatever generates kinetic energy. So we have a lot of, things like that.
And now your watch is...
My watch is the Moto 360 watch, which has my messages. And this is interesting. So 2 things that we learned. One is it's hard to take your phone out in a meeting and check your messages, but this is a fairly easy thing to do. It's socially acceptable thing to do. And I'll tell you, there's going to be a whole new Emily Post thing coming out about a very interesting phenomenon. We have to tell anybody under about 30 in a business meeting that we held that they have to announce that they're taking notes on their phone. Otherwise, anybody over 30 thinks, what's that asshole doing? He's checking his email, right? So now, if they were sitting there with a yellow pad, furiously scribbling, they'd be the most diligent person in the world. So who knew? There are these cultural changes coming that the technology part is driving. And we have to be on top of that too. So yeah, but what I'll tell you is this, and this again is a Chicago thing, not a West Coast or East Coast thing. We don't think that the next 5 years in Chicago are going to be inventions. We think they're going to be innovation. And the difference is inventing is something brand new, okay? There's so much available technology now that is scalable, proven, industrial strength, inexpensive, that we can apply to industries like real estate to increase productivity, to save time, to save money, that we don't have to look very far. This isn't rocket science. So we have companies like Broker Savant, which helps you abstract leases. We have Georama, which is a video touring kind of thing. And just imagine that, you want to see a property and it's literally attached to somebody who's walking through, but it's interactive. So you're saying, let me see the view out that window, or let me see this part of the facility. So a lot of different things that are going to change the industries and eliminate paper and take advantage of the 3 or 4 major sort of trends in 2015 and beyond relate to mobility, relate to connectivity, relate to wearables, but to a lesser extent until the batteries get better. Wiki work, this idea that we can work anywhere now and that we're going to work anywhere, and that by virtue of the technology, we can recover retirees, stay-at-home moms, students, all of these folks can be pulled back into the workforce. And believe me, they're not going to work in a physical location. They may be place-based or location constrained, but we can reach them now and we can distribute work to them. So that's a very exciting thing. And we're going to see more and more of these clusters where companies in areas of interest come together. And the reason is that you discover very quickly how these technologies migrate from one industry to another. And so we encourage this sort of, selective stealing. And I'll give you a really good example. Almost everybody has seen the free Coke machine, which is basically it's in Chipotle or wherever, and it's 160 flavors of Coke, right? Now, that technology, which replaced what used to be called the bag in the box, okay, that was 19 gallons of water in a 20-gallon box and a little bit of flavoring. You could have 3 of them, and then you maxed out the capacity of your storage room or the machine. Now you have 160. The technology that's used in that came from precision cartridge dosing for anti-cancer drugs, and it just squirts a little bit of flavoring into whatever you choose. This is attached to tap water. There's no transporting of this expensive, useless water. And so that's part one. So everybody sort of understands, wow, that's pretty cool. What very few people understand is that 1 million people a day express to Coca-Cola their flavor preferences through that system. So it's a living, real-time focus group, and they literally are saying lemon lime is off the charts. We're shipping more product to Atlanta, things like that. So it's a two-way street. Everything is now a data chain and a data communication, and a lot of that is going to change the way we work.
Great. I think we have a little time for questions. I'd love to get a couple of questions from the crowd for while we have Howard here today. Do we have microphones available? We do. We do. Michael's right there with microphones. A couple of questions for Howard. We have one right there for Mr. Drew Neiman.
Good. You think you don't need it, but then I'm going to have to repeat the whole question.
That's just like a roll. What's the size that you say, at 5,000 or 8 employees or 10 employees, that they start to crowd the space, and they're not.
So in the new space, we're looking to opt out at about 16 to 20 people. That's a workable formulation. And 16 to 20 people is roughly 1,600 to 2,400 square feet. Sort of depends on the use. One of the things to understand, notwithstanding Groupon, which I always thought was not a technology company, but a boiler room with 2 guys who told a good technology story. And I love them both. I mean, clearly it works, right? But these tech businesses are not people intensive by and large. So they scale, but they don't scale in terms of people. They scale in terms of users. We have people in our space who are 4 and 5 person companies with tens of millions of users because there's no cost to distributing these technology solutions worldwide. And so it's amazing. They need to build customer support, but even that is increasingly automated. So I'd say 25 people is probably not.
Would they be devised, kind of contiguous, or would they be spread throughout?
What we're doing is this path of you start in shared space, then reserved space, then your own space. So it's a progression, and if you come to 1871, if you haven't been there, part 1 looks like a frat house, and part 2 looks like you grew up, right? And and we wanted, and we designed it to be aspirational, to be absolutely, I want to get there because that's where the people who made it live.
Mr. Tullman, could you elaborate on the female entrepreneurship that you mentioned? I think there are many of us now who would like to understand what you're doing with that.
Sure. We have a program called WISDOM, WISTEM. The STEM part is, of course, science and technology, engineering, and math. And we've added STEAM, so it's art for all kinds of personal reasons. What we're doing is working with Motorola, working with some other groups, the Lefkowski, the whole thing's Family Foundation, to develop special programming around women to assist them and to create sort of clusters around women-owned and operated and run businesses, of which we have probably 20% of the people, 25% of the people in 1871 are women. So it's an ongoing process. We're doing the same thing around veterans. And those programs will consist of a variety of different things. I mean, until you live through this, you don't get that 5 to 7 p.m., as an example, is probably the worst single time to hold events. We think it's a nice break at the end of the day and before people take the train home, except that's sort of the groupthink of, from How to Succeed in Business. Those are the corporate executives catching the train, and they're mostly men. So we're in that mode, as an example. More of the activities will be from 12 to 2, so the full population can take advantage of them, and things like that. I mean, and believe me, we don't think we know, which is why we're building an advisory board of women executives and entrepreneurs to really help us design supplementary programs that can be of assistance to female entrepreneurs.
Good morning, Howard. Thank you. It's an intriguing presentation. Dan Cooper with 90 North. Question, can you speak more to this concept of focus space and people moving from the collaborative environment? Some kind of concepts that you see and where it goes?
Yeah, I think that, we think that it's really important for them to share the educational resources, to share the technical resources, to share all of the coaching and mentoring that we do. To give you an idea, last year at 1871, 5,000 hours of one-on-one mentoring, which is people coming in from the industry to meet with the companies, 400 events, 250 workshops. So a big part of this is not simply about the space, it's really about the resources of the training and the mentoring that goes on. But having said that, we're just increasingly finding that you need to take a step back, and we're working with Steelcase on some sound solutions and some environmental sort of solutions that will permit people to get into areas where they can have small group meetings and have enough privacy to feel like they can conduct their business. Video conferencing facilities, as an example, in theory are great until you realize that, they better be in rooms and they better be in sort of enclosed areas, because especially the people on the other end really don't know the audience that they're speaking to, and so you have a lot of issues around that as well.
Michael, we have time for another question or two?
Yes. Good morning, Howard, and thank you. It was a very enlightening presentation. You mentioned the open ceiling plan. People are concerned about security and
sound.
And sound.
Yeah, and sound.
What effect do you think that'll have on the tenant improvement costs? Because now that you're kind of going back to tone of silence to date myself.
Yeah, I mean soffits basically.
Right, soffits.
Well, I'll tell you something we learned, which is just brand new, and that is that white noise is great until you turn on the speakerphone. And then what you discover is you raise the ambient level in the room. That's great for the people in the room. It completely destroys the success of the speakerphone because the speakerphone picks that ambient noise up and suppresses the conversation. So we're trying to work around that as a technical issue. We're trying to figure out how to do both. But and I don't think I think that in different areas it's going to vary. I think that there are areas, for example, student spaces and student unions and things will continue to be open for all kinds of good reasons. You want to get as much light as you can. One of the issues with the MART is how deep the floor is and how to figure out how to get light from the windows throughout the space. So we did a tremendous amount of glass. When you do glass, you have all of these sort of sound issues that are even enhanced because the glass is also bouncing. So.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Howard. Sure. It was a very nice presentation. I'm curious about the recruiter you hired.
Yeah.
And how that person is remunerated, how you work that into your business plan.
So when we started, we said that if she hired someone for one of our startups, they would pay $750 as opposed to 30% of first year salary. And if it was a technical hire, they would pay $1,500 because those are a little harder and to come by. And clearly, that's massively subsidized relative to the market, but it's worked out great, and it's just another one of the perks that we think are important because, as I said to you, as I said before, talent is such a critical driver to the success of these businesses, and we would expect to continue to provide things like that, capabilities to create marketing videos, the ability, we have all of the crowdfunding organizations within our space. The United States is way backward in terms of equity crowdfunding, so we brought in the leading global crowdfunding company, and they actually do equity crowdfunding. In the US, we're still basically stuck with, I can give you a product or I can give you a t-shirt, but I can't sell you stock in my company. This is 3 years on from the passing of the Jobs Act, and the SEC still hasn't implemented that. But crowdfunding as a tool is off the charts. I think we've raised more than $2 million just at 1871 through these crowdfunding tools. So now all the companies have access to Indiegogo, all the companies have access to our crowd, and you're going to see more and more of that. In fact, within Elm Spring, one of our incubators, one of the companies there is enabling crowdfunding for real estate transactions.
Question?
Howard, who are you texting at 4 a.m. these days?
Is that Mike Drew? Who's that? So my day starts at 4. Somebody asked me what the day was like. So 4 to 5 is writing and reading, and ideally it's reading, not emails, it's reading. And then 5 to 6 is sort of exercise, and 6 o'clock I'm heading to the office. I'm in the office from about 6:30 to about 6:30. And throughout that time, I do meetings, mentoring, everything sort of around the organization, events and things like that. And then the evening is sort of another cycle of work and some basically reading and writing, and then I go to sleep. And I usually send Mike Drew a harassing, email about why New City has no landscaping, for example. I drive down Clybourne every single day. See, that's what you get.
Michael, how are we doing on time?
You've got time for one more question.
Time for one more.
There's one over there.
Here we go.
So as the broker, I make a living in efficient markets. How do you envision the future of our industry?
Did you say inefficient or inefficient?
There's buyers and sellers.
Yeah. So I think you're screwed. I think the two words that are going to drive the future of every business are transparency and efficacy. Transparency because everybody is going to know everything, pretty much, and efficacy because you're going to deliver the right results. If you do that, you're in great shape. And if you don't, if you rely on ignorance is not a good investment. Education is expensive, but ignorance is much more expensive. So honestly, the lack of information, I think that's going to go away. I think that we're going to find more and more instances. We have companies at 1871 that are working to bypass brokers entirely and deal directly with landlords and say, you got 40 units. The brokers are sort of shielding those units from the public. The public wants to know that, so they're disintermediating the brokers. But I think that in all these industries, it's never going to cease to be about relationships. It's never going to cease to be a one-on-one connection. One of the changes that's interesting, there's a company called Glossary. They take the long view, and this is really interesting. It's taken the car guys forever to learn that it's not selling you one car, it's having you as a lifetime customer. And so when you look at not commercial, but commercial and really residential as well, starting a strategy now to build a connection to customers that you're serving them and you're looking after their interests for the next 20 or 30 years and owning a portfolio of those relationships is probably the most important thing that a broker is going to want to do. We can't treat these things as one-off transactions.
On that high note, please join me in thanking Howard Tullman for his time today.
For a contractor, it's not enough to have the safest processes, or the most accurate estimating, or leading-edge technology and tools. For a builder, what's required is construction that's even more advanced in the form of experience and insight and leadership. At Leopardo, our people are among the best and the brightest in the industry, who build world-class projects across practically every major sector. At Leopardo, our people are the reason for our success.